content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you.
Yeah, man, I ain't switch over from the Star Wars shit. My bad, man. Let me get my my normal setup going here, bro. I'm tripping with my audience right now, man. This fugazi bullshit. So let me turn off, man. This get my thing going, man. What's cracking, y'all, man? I'm GG, man. You tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. The place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chaser, man. I had the shit going from yesterday, man. My bad. But before I get things started like I always do, man, I want to give a shout out to all the members of the Green Gorilla channel. Straight up, man. Michael Ross, big ups, man. Lord Hamal, Kill the Game, Dr. Thunder, BGS Ibmore, Brotherly Love, Jason Hales, Be About Peace and Pleasure, and Charles Finney, big up, man. Interesting Thought, Lee Ways, Bim Rock, Black Swerve 404, Until I'm Not, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, Apex Prowler, Ezekiel Will, Naomi Gary, and Jay Cleveland Green, big up. The Toxic Masculinist, big up. Pulpit 28, No Sleep, Broken Blade, Mr. King, Larry RSF, Son, Devon Love Ridge, Afro Truth TV, and Show Me, big up. Big up to Spain, man, Seven Coast Dojo, Anthony Davis, I'm Just Jules, An Honest Look, Sherlin Woe, Ricky Dawson, Stefan, Julius Ferguson, and True 7360, big up. Mr. Me Too, Call for President, Gold Professor, AKs and Curtains, H-Town, Roguish the Billmonger, Adrian Thomas, Electrician 480, Binger, and Cutting Up with the Jones, big up. Sandco, D. Scott, Path Guy, Pete Rock, Aaron Peters, Barnolas, Vincent Lindsay, Beautiful Trauma, Quiz the Poet, and Black Wizard 80 OS, big up. Jazz Tech, Shadow Observer, Artist and MC, Troy Warren, Mrs. KP Bailey, Alan Wiley, The Face, Life of Commerce, Dreamlit, and Timothy Blewett, big up. Jeffrey Speed, Marvin Battle Jr., Adam, Ignatz Mouse, Brian Peake, Scott Haywood, Black Uru, Dr. Tree 33, and Leroy Honeycutt, big up. 77 Bass X, Brian McMurray, Karen S., Charles Rogers, Rick Ross, Sandra Jean, Charles Gilmore, Greg Berry Little, and Mr. Valentino, big up. Cameron 87, Dr. Rock, Mark Swift, I Collar, Donald Watts, Coach Hotep, Old Soul Chief, Mr. Blue Collar, TD Hip Hop Media, and Drew Main, big up. Mr. Heat, big up. Sir Anthony, big up. MLR, Universal 178, Rasheed Barnes, Aaron Smith, D. Ace, Red Pill Revelator, A Double, Dr. Tierson Johnson, Kalonja Kala, Hostile 8 Up, and W. Pierre 1, big up. And I can't forget them brothers, man. David Carroll, Force Windu, Kevin Samuels, big up, man. And on the Patreon side, I want to give a shout out to all the active members out there, man. Robert Wicks, welcome aboard, man. Passport OG, Chris Flowers, Christopher Burton, Daxby, J Live, Rashawn Phillips, Keith Bass, Nick, Albert C, Dr. Ben Vincent, J Cleveland Green, I'm the Light of My Father, Waffle Weave, Tyrone Hampton, Darnell Smith, Excalibur, Pursuer, Prisoner Taz, Dragon 59, Jay Beatty, Mr. Michi, Mo Mal, and the Sang were big up. Y'all deserve a round of applause for the cause, man. Straight up, man. Thank you so much for supporting the Green Gorilla channel on an ongoing basis, man. I'll be back, man, after these quick little commercial messages, man.
What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely. Straight up, no chaser. Today, I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless.
All right, man, I'm GG, man. We back, man. You tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place for black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chasers, you know what I'm saying? Brought my man along, man. The one and only Admiral Smoke. They call him Sand Dog, man. What's cracking with you, dog? What's happening with you? Hold on. Before I get started, though, man, shout out to Volcanus, man. Big up to the brother for that kind and generous donation, man. I appreciate that from you, man. Straight up, man. Anyway, man, getting to the business, man. What is this thing, man, that you came up with, man? Are you who you really say you are? What you talking about, bro? I'm gonna press you today, dog. You know what I'm saying? I'm sweating your ass today. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, you know, you're a neophyte and shit out here, man, on these streets. You know what I'm saying? You got all the regalia on. You know what I'm saying? You looking good. Your boots all clean and shit. You know what I'm saying? They shiny and purple. I mean, you know, you got they gold. You got the brand new purple shoestrings and shit. You know what I'm saying? Brand new good looking shirt too, man. I'm thinking I might need to get that shirt, bro.
Let me go ahead and make my pro-fights proud, man. One, shout out to Volcanus, man. I like the name. If anybody's familiar with Transformers, you have the Dinobots, right? So now in this incarnation of Transformers, the Dinobots actually come together and form a giant robot, and it's called Volcanus.
Yeah. They biting off Voltron though, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I fucks with Volcanus, you know what I'm saying? I do. But that's I'm old school though, you know what I'm saying? Voltron, I just remember the Voltron. But before that though, I remember it was the Battle of the Planets.
Oh, fam.
You know what I'm saying? So before Voltron was the Battle of the Planets, bro.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? Fiery Phoenix, baby. What you know about Fiery Phoenix? You motherfuckers don't know about Fiery Phoenix. I'm straight up, bro.
But today's show, man, again, back to being sweated is, are you who you say you really are, right? So there are many of us who come to this platform and say that we are conservatives, right? And so the question is that, for me, a lot of times in life, you don't know what you really believe until you put it to the test, right? So, I'm Muslim, I'm observing Ramadan, but I was born Southern Baptist and Christian. And one day I woke up and said, hey, if I wasn't born to these people from this place, from this country, what religion would I be? And I started off on the path, and I went from Greek gods, ancient Egyptian gods, West African gods, Hinduism, Jainism, whatever isms or entities that I can find. And ultimately, Islam is where I landed because I decided to put my belief system to the test. And ultimately, just kind of using religion as an example, what I liked about Islam was Islam challenges you to do such, right? So it will say, hey, go get all your friends from amongst the men and jinn and produce something better than this if you can, right? And so that's what I appreciated about Islam, because it was like, if you have anything better than this, show it to me, right? And I was like, hey, and I tried to smoke that pack and I got smoked, right? And so again, here I am today, coming back politically, right? Do you really believe, okay, if you're conservative, so to speak, do you really believe in the tenets or the value systems of American conservatism?
Oh, shit. So hold on. Wait a minute. So before we begin, man, I want to give a shout out to Be About Peace and Pleasure. He says, literally just had a thought about how much I hate hypocrisy. I'm going to enjoy this. So shout out to Be About Peace and Pleasure, man. Shout out to him, man. I thought you was, what I thought you meant when you said, are you who you really say you are? I thought you was going to say, I thought you was going to be like, the half of the niggas in the space really is, Captain Saver hoes waiting in the wings, waiting to go save these hoes, man. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Why you treat
Like
me
that's
so
that's
bad?
guys got secret identities, man. In the daytime they red pill like a motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? As soon as a nice looking woman come up, they all of a sudden, man, they got dollars and shit. Where them dollars at? Where them dollars at? Them niggas like, okay, here you go.
Well,
Here you
that's
go,
a
baby.
point.
You know what I'm saying? Whatever you want. I know I can provide whatever you need. Call me 622135.
So, man, that means
What makes you think that I would try to run a game on you? I'm just being ignorant, bro. Like, because the reason why I even say that is because, we had a show the other day about, Keisha in the space. Like, what is Keisha doing all up in here, man? You know what I'm saying? And the real deal is, man, cats, man, they'll see Keisha. She'll have her breastises all on the camera and shit, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or she'll have a little pretty face. She'll have a little makeup and her hair done up and shit. And motherfuckers will be like, ooh, yeah, boo, you said that. Thank you, sis. Let me stop, man. You know what I'm saying? The niggas got that trick appeal, that whip appeal, man. that baby face. But go ahead, man. Go ahead, bro. Do your thing.
Yeah, fam. So so again, so when we talk about the ideas that shape conservatism in America, right? So you're going to hear things like limited government, individualism, republicanism, right? Moral absolutism, right? And so when you take some of these concepts that make up what we would call American conservatism, man, ultimately, do we believe in these things, right? So first and foremost, one of the things that we'll hear, especially in a libertarian kind of sense, right, we'll hear about limited government, right? Why government should be smaller, less interference from government in regards to, business regulations, or less interference from government in regards to social programs, and all of these other things, right? And so, so for people like me who say, okay, well, Sandog, why is it that you believe in limited government when at the end of the day, if you're African American, for the most part, everything that the majority of what you and your people have gained has come from federal intervention, right? So,
right.
So when you get people up there, so when you get African Americans who get up there talking about, okay, well, we need limited government. And so the question will come, okay, well, did limited government put an end to slavery, right? Did limited government end Jim Crow, right? And from that point forward, did limited government enact, certain civil rights policies, again, that Black people would need to flourish, especially as it comes to housing, education, desegregation, so on and so forth, right? And so now when you get to somebody like Sandog, right, the reason why I believe in limited government will be because at the end of the day, right, if institutional racism exists, right, that would be the argument, right? So the idea is that, okay, if institutional racism exists, the same way I just gave you the example of how the federal government has relieved African Americans from institutional racism, there are also many examples where the federal government has also simultaneously imposed racism, with the adaptation of certain state laws, right, and slave codes and rights towards Black people that will ultimately shape what our destiny will be in America, right? So when we get to things like, let's say, for example, the 3/5 compromise, or when we get to things like, are Black people, are Black people citizens or not, or things of that nature. So Sandog, and the long and short of things, right? The reason why I believe in limited government beyond the context of after the federal intervention, which I obviously support, is that this would be something that would give Black people the freedom of maneuver to engage or to engage in commerce, right? And so there are many people. Remember, I'm a fan of what Booker T. Washington had proposed for Black people, right? So what you would call, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, under the Atlanta Compromise. Is that's if I'm talking about the exact right thing in history as it relates to Booker T. Washington, right? So the idea was that for African Americans, one of our first steps towards freedom was that we would need economic freedom prior to political freedom. So the fact that we will need to establish the fact that we needed to establish a strong economic base in industry, having our own towns, commerce, etc., that will be more important to Black America in the long run to start with, rather than a voting block or this kind of political base with nothing behind it, right? So Sandog comes from that idea of the limited government in terms of allowing Americans, or Black America specifically, the freedom of maneuver to establish industry, commerce, their own supply chains, and that things of that nature, without heavy interventions, be it federal or state. So this is where Sandog comes from.
So your limited government is the limited Southern government.
Yes. So
Okay.
So
now, let me just say this. So just in case you don't know, because you kind of stumbled over what the Atlanta Compromise actually was. So let me let people know exactly what it was. Okay. So the Atlanta Compromise was an agreement, right, between African American leader Booker T. Washington and Southern, racist white motherfuckers in the late the 19th century, actually. It's talking about the 1800s, right?
Yes.
So basically, Booker T. Washington founded, of course, the Tuskegee Institute, and he basically delivered this speech at the Cotton States and International Exposition, okay, in Atlanta, okay, and it's 1895 is when he did it, okay. And the speech that he gave became known as the Atlanta Compromise speech. So in the speech, basically Washington said, let's do a piecemeal approach to racial integration. Let's not worry about that so much. We don't need social progress as much as we need economic self-improvement. We need vocational education and self-sufficiency, rather than demanding equal, standing in the law with white folks, okay? So in essence, he's basically saying, look, white guys, I know you don't want us around you. We don't want to be around you motherfuckers either. Give us some resources and some support and some education, and we'll develop our own economic opportunities, okay? Now, this was appealing to many white folks, white Southerners in particular, because they saw it as a means by which to maintain their cultural hegemony, you know what I'm saying, while also promoting economic growth and stability. Of course, the Atlanta Compromise was met with criticism from some African Americans, particularly W.E.B. Du Bois, okay, who argued that he conceded too much to white people, white supremacist ideologies and so forth, and undermined, what he perceived to be the appropriate struggle for civil rights. But, so in the years that would follow, this would become a point of contention between Du Bois and his, assertion that we need civil rights as opposed to Washington's accommodationist approach. So, I'm not here to, say right now one way or the other. I'm just telling you what the Atlanta Compromise is, okay? So that's exactly what it is. Now go ahead, my brother. And shout out to Ghetto User 49, man. Appreciate the donation, sir. Appreciate that shit. Appreciate that. But go ahead, man.
Correct. Right. So yeah. So in that regard, so right again, and so understanding, engaging, and like I said, so things that will limit or restrict, like I said, restrict the government. Because again, it's like I said, we could kind of like go back and forth on it, but that's not what the discussion is. That's not what the discussion is for today. So for me, the idea of limited government, especially from Black people, right? Again, especially for Black people, is that mobility, right? Is that freedom, is the freedom to come and go or engage in the practices that's required, as you just eloquently articulated for me, right? In order to kind of develop our own infrastructure and ultimately our own economic base. So, like I said,
hold on, before you go any further, man, I want to give a shout out to Ghetto User 49. He said, support your scholar. Yes, sir. Appreciate that.
Don't forget to tip the bartender.
You got to tip the bartender. Also, man, shout out to Grinch, man. Word to the mother, man. I ain't seen this dude in a minute, man. Shout out to the Grinch, man. I hope you ain't out here stealing Christmas shit. You know what I mean? Motherfucker he got them blicks and them sticks ready to make sure, you know, when December come around, he about to snatch that out your mouth. No, I'm just being silly, man. Shout out to the Grinch, man. What's cracking with you, bro?
Facts.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm just, you know, I ain't really saying too much, man. I'm just looking at all the super chats out there. I ain't really paying attention to nothing much else. So, okay, so in essence, limited government to you means limited government in the basically capacity for, you know, the government to impose upon the freedoms of Black folks. But if that's the case, saying dog, don't that shit look a little bit like civil rights?
Yeah, correct.
I mean, does I'm just saying, like, look, I'm sweating your ass today. Okay?
Yeah, I'm here for it.
I'm hazing you up. I ain't hazing you, but I'm heating you up. You know what I'm saying? I got neck shit, you know what I'm saying? Like, if motherfucker wants some neck, I'm gonna make sure he get, and you know, what neck is slapping the motherfucker on the back of his neck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To make sure he got the right answer. You ain't got the right answer, dog.
No,
But you say no. I'm just talking shit right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because here's what's hot. What people really don't understand is that. So, for example, and that's why again I mentioned the term American conservatism, because what's American conservatism compared to the rest of the world is actually quite liberal, right? So Americans, in a sense, are conservative in what you would call new or liberal ideas as compared to the rest of the world. Right.
Let me just say this before you even begin.
Yeah.
I've been over this on many different occasions, bro. Like over and over again, I have been somebody who's tried to articulate to the public, like the whole concept of limited government comes out of a European political tradition where there wasn't any freedom before. Okay. There was divine authority of kings. Okay, there was no limited government. In fact, there was nothing that limited the government from anything. The government had an absolute right to do whatever the fuck it wanted, when it wanted, however it wanted. Okay, it's called autocracy. But men in the Enlightenment era began to develop philosophical traditions which, you know, countermanded what they considered to be, you know, authoritarian government, the divine right of kings. So it's called the social contract tradition. This shit should not be like a mystery to guys, man. You know what I'm saying? So this is a European tradition that can be traced back to history, particularly, you know, the social contract tradition, which was basically arguing against the excesses of, you know, monarchical authority. Okay? And so there's a historical basis for it, okay? Now, to some degree, I'm going to say, hey, look, if this is the tradition that we have to work with, I'm going to work with it also, okay? Insofar as I don't want a force that's external to me imposing on me in such a way that I can't utilize whatever my God-given talents are and use them to my own benefit. Okay, now I'm not a social contractarian. I've already given my reasons why. Okay, but if I can work within the paradigm, if you want me to. Okay, I can make arguments for my position in relation to it, but at the end of the day, my thing is, while white boys were arguing about the imposition of the crown on their affairs and their ability to do business and their ability to, develop social institutions and make decisions within the confines of them, shit, these people were getting, like, the colonists, they were pissed off over being taxed. That was their problem. They were being taxed without being represented. Okay, you had the Quartering Act and shit like this, okay? And so to them, this represented something akin to slavery. I mean, because that's the language that they utilize, okay? This is like slavery. And they were like, no man should consent to this. Well, why the fuck should we? So they came up with all these cockamamie arguments, to justify their enslavement of us while they so-called fought for their liberty. And so I'm like, man, fuck you. If liberty is good enough for you motherfuckers, it's good enough for us. That's how I feel about it. That's just my position, okay? But go ahead, Sam.
Facts. And again, and that's really, honestly, what you just brought up about civil rights, right? That is really the punchline, again, of it all, right? Because again, that was going to kind of be my closing thing. But since you, like I said, since you've taken it and you brought it up, what I find paradoxical in American politics is that Black people's struggle of civil rights coming out of slavery and oppression and all of these things, right, should really align with the conservative values of the country. But ironically, somehow it's over in the left and what you would call, liberalism within the context or the framework of American society, right? So, when you look at America, if we are this thing of land of the free and, like I said, and home of the brave, right? The history of African Americans and the civil rights struggle of African Americans. These are the types of things that should be at the forefront of conservatism, right?
That's a good ass argument though. That's a good argument there, saying dog. Okay, so I ain't gonna give you no neck right now. I'm not gonna slap you on the back of your neck. You know what I'm saying? Because that makes sense. Because their tradition is about resisting against tyrannical government. Blacks during the civil rights movement were arguing against a tyrannical government imposing upon their freedom to vote, their freedom to assemble and move wherever the fuck they wanted. Right?
Correct.
So if that's the case, then why doesn't the people who extol the virtues of limited government and, free market capitalism, because sharecropping is not fucking free market capitalism, bro.
Gotcha.
Slavery definitely ain't free market capitalism. Okay? So, the only thing I'm trying to argue is, all I'm trying to say is it's a decent argument, as far as I'm concerned. Like, why didn't the proponents of the civil rights become perceived as emblematic of American patriotism by the right? Or even today, like, why does not the right extol the virtues of the left? But we know the fucking reason why, man. We know the reason why, bro.
Yeah.
The reason is because you're a nigger. How about that? Let's just keep this shit 100,000, bro. Because you're a nigger. And then you ain't got no rights that the white man is bound to respect. Now, they actually said that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally. Look,
facts.
The black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect.
Facts. Because again, right, because where Sandog is coming from is this. I'm not the type of person to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? So for many people in general, but African Americans specifically, right, there's a lot of times the bad habit of a knee-jerk reaction to throw away something because of its relationship with so-called whiteness, whether it's although it may be a good idea, so to speak, right? So when Sandog is looking at limited government in a sense, almost kind of like what was espoused in Separate but Equal, right? So in terms of, okay, perhaps now under this limited government, right, Black people within their own areas or their own jurisdictions now may have their own courts in a sense, right? So now if I'm Sandog, it is 1910 and I'm in court, I'm really being judged by a jury of my peers, right? And not necessarily, being judged by an alleged jury of my peers that may exist, for the most part, that may exist outside, like I said, outside of my community, right? So kind of like having those degrees of separation in a sense, at least according to Sandog and what I theorize and what I'm guessing, right? What I'm guessing in a sense is a thing of, out of sight, out of mind, right? I'm over here doing my thing. You're over there doing, You're over there doing your thing. And, Alabama A&M University and University of Alabama are all the same and built up, and it works, they work in the sense like, tit for tat. So this is where Sandog is coming from with this, is that, although these ideas for many African Americans may have a particular relationship to whiteness in a sense, right, that might be off-putting, these are still ideas within the fact that, we live within the context of the United States of America. These are still ideas that we need to kind of, from my perspective, kind of embrace, practice and execute, for our, for our own benefit and ultimately our own survival, right? And, going into the next one, right? So you will get that, now here's the great thing in Black America, right? So individualism, again, ultimately another kind of economically liberal concept, right? Whether it's economic individualism with laissez-faire, or once again espoused by the civil rights movement, right? For a man to be judged by the content of his character and not the color of his skin. And so when we talk about the bigger thing, so in terms of this kind of American conservatism, wrapped up in this liberal framework, individualism is something that African Americans love to the T. And it's one of my biggest gripes with Black America, because magically I'm an individual when it comes to these things, but if it comes to something that disagrees with the rhetoric that Black America has, now all of a sudden I'm a coon or sellout. So again, so for me, because Black people love this thing called individualism, my question would be, what are coons or sellouts if you don't have a unified value system? So if you got Sandog and Clarence Thomas and Ben Carson on this side of the fence espousing these values, right? So these are the people that you call coons and sellouts. So for the rest of Black America, under the tenets of individualism, you please tell me, what is your agenda and what are we preventing you from having?
Okay,
Yeah,
so yeah. I'm confused about that though. Re-articulate that in such a manner as to make it more simplistic.
Okay. So pretty much individualism, from what I observe, is something that Black America loves, right? In terms of their day by day, right? So for example, you have Mr. Fantastic on the show, right, last week,
Okay.
right? So there are a lot of people that vehemently disagree with the stances that come from Mr. Fantastic,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Because,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because within the ideologies or the framework of what we would call Black America, Mr. Fantastic has ideas and values that are different or separated from mainstream Black America, right? So what I'm trying to say is, how is it on one hand, right, my body, my choice, abortions. I'm free to love who I want to love. You can't tell me how to think or feel, right? But once it kind of goes against what I believe or what I think or what I feel in terms of the mainstream Black American message, it now becomes a problem.
I get the argument. So let me put it in simplistic terms, right?
Okay.
It's all good, right? For me, when I accept regular, African American talking points, right? But it's all bad if I say something that deviates from what's considered to be politically correct Black liberal talking points. Okay. In essence, okay, like liberal values are held in high regard and esteem as it pertains to issues according to a certain kind, but particularly woke values. Okay, like liberty is all good in that regard. But as soon as somebody disagrees with you, then those fucking values and those norms go out of the window, and then you get stigmatized for not having the right ones. Right? Is that somewhat
Correct.
what it is that you're saying?
Correct.
So it's cool, like you said. It's cool. The values have to be of the right kind. Like, okay, well, we're gonna, support, intersectional feminism, gay rights, and it's cool to change your sex. However, if I support Donald Trump, then I'm a coon.
Correct.
Okay, so it's like, hold on, wait a minute. You can do everything under the sun except for what you consider to be anathema to the progress of Black folks. But who's to say exactly what that is in a state where, negative liberty is the paramount value? Okay, so, it is what it is, bro. You know what a woke value is. Mr. Good Times, you know what it is, bro. We all know what they are, bro. So, that's an interesting question, though, but, my viewpoint on it all is this. As I said before, I'm not, philosophically, I'm not the type of individual who leans towards giving credence to the idea of individualism. Now, I've already stated metaphysically why that's the case for me. Okay, I'm not here to, to go through all of the details about that today. I'm just not going to do it, okay? But if it is a value that you hold, then how can you tell a motherfucker what to say or think or what to do in other regards? Like, here's a perfect example to me that rings a bell, right? And even points to the contradiction in conservatives, right? So if I'm an individual and the only thing that, the state should be worried about is how I'm interfering with harming others, then why the fuck can't I smoke as much crack as I want to if I want to smoke crack? I'm just saying, like, if free, negative liberty is the paramount value in the culture, then why are you telling me what the fuck I can and can't do with my body? If it's the case that a woman can get an abortion, she can fuck who she wants, and you can do everything you want under the sun related to sex, why is there a problem with me consuming something that's considered to be an intoxicant? If I'm not directly harmed, and it's not indirect harm that's at the crux of the matter either. And a lot of people like to introduce, well, here are the consequences. The law does not say anything about indirect consequences, being an impediment to you being able to exercise liberty. Direct harm is, okay? So if it's your body, it's your choice, then why isn't it that way across the board? How can you pick and choose what's, something that is allowed or not allowed in relation to your negative liberty? Okay, so that's just a question that I got. But anyway, I think Kazorian has a question to ask you, Sando, because he kind of got triggered. So Kazorian, go ahead, speak on it, man. Talk to him.
Okay, yeah. So I have a question. Yeah, actually, it's for you as well, brother. Is there a Black party that can rival the liberals and conservatives so that you can better leverage your positions?
Well, again, these will be what you call independent, right, or swing voters. So that is what that is ultimately what can leverage a position, right? So even when you look at, for the most part, and I would say to some extent, that swing vote in a sense, applies to Black America itself, right? So if Black America, sits out an election, right, or decides to go with another party, then the Democratic Party, right, they don't have a assured victory the same way that they would have in certain population centers, in the United States. So, ultimately, for a population such as ours, or any other type of population, that will be a control in which you would engage the system. Or if you had smaller numbers, through investment into lobby or political campaigns, the things of that nature. So, these would be some of the controls or some of the ways that you could either manage or manipulate, the two-party system, right? Or and also for the most part too, and I know a lot of people tend to think it federal, but also the easiest way really to get it done is at your local level and ultimately the state.
Okay, shout out, and the gorilla guy. I got a question for you, brother.
Okay, so look, I can barely hear you. Your audio is a little choppy. So, can you restate the question one more time and then see if it's something you can do to adjust what's going on with your mic?
Give me 1 second. Let me use my mic. Yeah, you guys build. Let me get my microphone.
Yeah, he's going to take care of his microphone. So anyway, look, I think you were talking about a two-party system, right? As far as I'm concerned, because there's other places that don't have just two-party systems. Okay, like in England, they got multiple parties. They got the Labour Party, Whigs, Tories. I can't remember exactly what they call themselves now, but I mean, they have multiple parties. Okay.
Yeah. So my question really is: Black Americans are 15% of the population. Can't you create like a separate party that can act as an intermediary where your collective ideas are more collated in one area and leverage
Yeah,
that
I
towards
get it. Yeah, I get it. So his question is, why haven't Black people created their own political party that centers their own issues as a collective instead of just interpolating themselves into extant political parties that are already here. You know what I mean? Like why are we hitching our wagons to something that we have no control over setting the agenda? Okay, and that's a fair question. But before you answer that question, Be About Peace and Pleasure got triggered by the crack question. He says they can say the use of crack cocaine is associated with petty theft. That's indirect, though. On the contrary, alcohol is a legal substance, and I would guess millions of people die from drunk drivers. Let me just say this, right? Shout out to Peace and Pleasure, man, for the donation, though, to begin with. Shout out to him. Shout out to him. Look, if you know the history of drug laws in the United States, you know why drugs became illegal, man. It was based on race, bro. Like most everything, like motherfuckers don't understand America. Race is thoroughly interconnected and interwoven into every policy, every political institution, economic institution, the very geography of this place. Okay. And, initially, like the idea about drugs being this big deterrent and hindrance and this danger, it was based upon racialized reasoning. So, the marijuana was a problem because of the Mexicans. The shit used to be called hemp. But then now it's all of a sudden it's got an exotic name, marijuana, right? Opium were used by, you know, the Chinese. So now it becomes, you know, like something that's uber dangerous. Cocaine, black folks gonna use it and rape white women. I mean, you should hear the arguments that were being made during the time of Prohibition. But Prohibition in and of itself was a white woman's movement, man. Like a puritanical movement. We're gonna clean the country up and stop it. We're gonna clean it up and make sure everything is appropriate and moral and, you know, virtuous. And, you know, look, man, not to disrespect all white women, man, but look, here at the end of the day, man, they are a cause of a lot of fucking mischief in this country, man. I mean, you know, it even, and they say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Now, whether or not they, you know, what the prohibition of alcohol and drugs really did was it fucking created the mob. What the fuck happened, man? You basically created an underground industry because there was still a demand for these substances. So all you're doing is creating crime by fiat. You're creating crime by fiat. In order to do what? So that, you know, that's just my viewpoint of, you know, of sumptuary laws in general, whether it be prostitution, whether it be alcohol, whether it be tobacco, whether it be cocaine, speed, fentanyl, whatever. I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not promoting people to go out and use substances and get themselves addicted. That's not the position that I'm putting forth. But what I'm saying is, when you create prohibitions to substances that people are using, and you all of a sudden make them illegal, then what you're doing is you're creating a black market by fiat. Okay? And then you got to ask yourself a question, like, why would America do that? Why would it engage in that practice? And eventually they loosen, you know, the reins on alcohol, but everybody knows, like about Peace and Pleasure said, man, look, at the end of the day, alcohol is the biggest selling drug in the world, bro. It is, and it kills more people. Drugs, all the illicit drugs.
It's betel nut. Well, technically, it's betel nut in East Asia, but yeah, the point still stands. Like outside of East Asia, yeah, it's alcohol.
So okay, so look, you can take all the illegal drugs like codeine, opium, cocaine, heroin. You can take all of those drugs and combine them together, and it won't add up to the amount of death that's caused by alcohol and tobacco. Period. It just doesn't happen. Now, if you think I'm lying, go look the shit up. Go look it up on the internet, man. Those are the drugs that kill people the most. Alcohol and tobacco. Okay? Now, I'm not suggesting that people go out and get high. In fact, I would suggest, man, that you go do some pull-ups, some push-ups, and some dips. I think if you get nervous, you ought to go take a brisk walk or run. You got some stress, I suggest, you know, you go grab some 45 pounds of weights, man, and do some military presses and some curls and some shit. That's my suggestion, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, if we're talking about what actually kills you, that's what kills you. But we're moving beyond the path right here. You know, the path is, are you who you really say you are? Are you a conservative, really? And if so, why? But one thing that you neglected to mention, though, Sand Dog,
yes,
is that conservatism, although it is about limited government, although it is about fiscal responsibility and free market capitalism and the rule of law and individual liberty and so on and so forth, it's also about traditionalism.
Correct.
But let me finish my statement here. It's also about the promotion of traditional values, customs, and institutions, which they argue contribute to the maintenance of a strong and a stable society. Okay, so even though, you know, one can argue African Americans prior to the civil rights movement were among the most traditional of Americans.
Correct.
I
And
mean, you
that's
know,
where
like, I mean, we were, I mean, not to say that we, you know, we weren't indoctrinated into Christianity, but we were some strong Christians. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I mean, you talk about traditional Christian values, that's us. Going to church 3 times a day, man, bruh. I done been there, bro. We got to go to Sunday school. We got to go to the noon and the evening service. Like, man, bruh, I don't need to be at church this much, man.
From 7 a.m. to 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Sundays, fam. Yeah, I know. But again, that's where we get into it, right? So when I make this point, right? And again, if you are who you say you are, and that's what I'm saying, it applies to society, you know, to African Americans, or for those of us who say that we espouse or that we embody these values, right? So what I was going for, right, in this discussion, because remember, right, you would have conservative Christians, to your point, and under that comes, you know, moral absolutism. Now, with the moral absolutism, to your very point, right, African Americans take on these Christian values, right? These same Christian values lead to slave revolts. These same Christian values are talked about in the civil rights movement, which is why I say that it's hypocrisy that civil rights in and of itself is something that's on the left, because now you're into moral absolutism, right? That again, you know, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and are endowed certain unalienable rights by their creator, right? So now America's inability or refusal to deal with civil rights is, shout out to Green Gorilla during COVID, is what takes us from moral absolutism to moral relativism. Right? So a lot of what you're seeing today in terms of wokeism and woke culture and all of these other things is, at least from Sandog's perspective, or how I see the world in a sense, is again people who would come out of my political base, and their refusal of making or acknowledging the values presented by civil rights as American values. Right? Or as conservative or as conservative values, right? Because again, right, all of these things, right, you know, the 3/5 compromise, fighting against that. Again, Black people wanting the right to vote, you know, that all could be aligned with no taxation under representation. And like you said, hey, I'm breaking the chains of tyranny. I'm breaking the chains of freedom, right?
I'm gonna tell you why all this shit went left with Black folks, bro. I'm just gonna keep it a buck, okay? Like, Black people lost their moral center or their value center directly after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, dog. And the reason why is because civil rights, after the act was actually passed, it was hijacked from Black folks. It was no longer something that Black people had stewardship over. Mm-hmm. So everybody else was able to cash in off of the Civil Rights Act, whereas Black people had no more ability to steer, to steer how it would be interpreted and how it would actually be manifested. And we already know what happened, bro. I'm telling you what happened, bro. Let me show you. All I can do is just show you, bro. Let me see if I can get this shit going, man. This is what happened, bro.
Most important changes that have taken place in respect to the status of women since you've been in Congress.
Well, I think perhaps the most important was the one that added sex to the bill of 1964. This bill was drafted really to help Negroes. Now, it wasn't clear it would have meant that Negro women would have been given rights that were not available to white women. Therefore, we added sex. It is my belief that the drafters had assumed that no women would get any rights, so that I think both white and black women were helped by the bill.
The white chick is telling you what happened, man. She definitely ain't saying that black men were helped by the bill. Did that shit come out of her mouth? and look, when you add sex to the Civil Rights Act, guess what else you add to it? You add the gay agenda, and you add the woman component. And they're the primary beneficiaries of the Civil Rights Act at this moment. We got to stop fucking lying and just tell it how it is, bro. But nobody will do it because I'm going to tell you why they won't do it. Nobody wants to upend the status quo, or because what'll end up happening is you'll get occluded or stymied in your career or your social development as being regressive. As soon as you say anything, and look, white women know what the fuck they did. She's telling you right there, this is what we did. This shit was intended for Negroes, but it was gonna leave us out. And of course, being the type of motherfuckers they are, you can't leave us out. Am I lying?
Yeah, facts. I'd rather lose an arm.
You can't leave us out. You mean the niggers? They're gonna have more than us? What you mean? What you already had? You mean because you've been having more rights than Negroes. Because Negroes ain't had the right to vote. They ain't had the right to fucking associate and to move where they wanted to move in public spaces. Okay, none of this shit. Now all of a sudden you're gonna say, well, black women gonna have more than us. These people are masters at subterfuge, balkanization, fragmentation. They're masters at misinformation, man.
Yeah.
And but let me finish this though. So right now, in the academy, you better not say shit about these white chicks. And when it comes to government, you better not say shit about them. You can't connect them or tether them to colonialism, slavery, or Jim Crow. And you can't tether them to hijacking the Civil Rights Bill. You cannot do it without basically being called a misogynist. You can't even say, hey, look, the black women are able to benefit vicariously from what white women did in terms of hijacking the Civil Rights Bill and adding sex to it. And that gay people also are able to hijack the benefits that were supposed to be accrued to black folks from the civil rights movement, right? You can't even say it. If you do it, then you're considered to be what? Cancelable or some shit like that.
That's because, the reason why that is, Green Gorilla? Because again, under this, especially post-second wave of feminist society, socially speaking, so-called white women or Western so-called white women are supposed to be put at the top of the social hierarchy. Again, as the saying goes, if you want to know who rules over you, find out who you're not allowed to criticize.
But let me.
That's the reason why.
So look, everything about America to me is some inverted bullshit. Okay, so what I mean by that is really simple. So in the United States, and elsewhere throughout the world, you can make the case as well. But but particularly here for us, I'm just situating our experience as black people in the United States and black men in particular in the United States. White women were perceived as vulnerable to black men via rape, correct?
Yes.
Now, this really, you didn't start to hear these stories about how dangerous black men were until after the Civil War was over with. Because, prior to that time, the conceptualization of what a black man is like the Negro in fucking Huckleberry Finn and shit. You know what type of image the black man in and Huckleberry Finn is, right? The protective, docile, couldn't really harm a flea type of Negro that loves, to be subjected to the rule of a white man, or even in this case, a white boy. Right? Because, you got to think about it. You got a grown-ass black man roaming the fucking goddamn wilderness with a white boy. So, the black man was not considered to be dangerous until, the whole logic surrounding freedom of black men was going to impose a threat to white women. But in reality, the real deal is white folks all along have been committing sexual perverse acts against black folks, man. Male and female. But now it's time to create a boogeyman. And of course, the boogeyman is you. And it's projection, if you ask me. Oh, well, we got to protect our women now. We can't let the niggas run free or else they're going to do what we been doing. So freedom to them means you can fuck our bitches. You can penetrate that white pussy now. This is what it means to me. I'm not gonna sit here and play games with it and speak politically correct terms and trying to espouse this view. So now the white woman becomes something that needs to be protected from the oogity boogity forces out there who are, basically plotting meticulously in order to corrupt what's, pristine. Which we already know white women ain't never been fucking pristine.
Like I said before, Green Gorilla, okay, again, many, as I said, and I was saying this on BGS's live the other day, I said, again, many so-called white women and many non-black men, especially so-called white men, put so-called white women up on a pedestal. That's the real reason why it is seen as, whenever you see a so-called black man interacting with a so-called white woman, or I'm saying romantically involved with a so-called white woman, especially if she's attractive, oh man, motherfuckers be getting butthurt because again, it's how dare you lowly Negroes defile our divine white goddess? Like that's the type of logic that they're having.
But they never perceive white women. But here's the funny thing to me. See, they never perceive white women as being godly and like virtuous prior to their contact with other cultures and shit where they become like this imperial power. You don't start to see this conversation, this kind of, this pedestalization of white women until white men go outward and start colonizing. You don't hear the shit. Because prior to that, they were perceived as the weaker vessel, the corruptors of men. I'm not saying that that's true, actually, but if you look at the biblical narratives about women and, their closeness to Satan and all this shit, I'm not saying that's true, okay? But all I'm saying is these are the kind of narratives that were told about women. Especially in a world where, ecclesiastic authority is, not just spiritual power, but temporal, secular power. Because, the Catholic Church had, real world power. Man, they can get you killed.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So, we talking about the Malafari, or what they call it, the Malleus Maleficarum, the witch's hammer. The motherfuckers were going around the countryside, looking for witches and shit. We are about to test you bitches. And see if you're in league with the devil. And if we think you are, you're going to die. And if you're not, you're going to die. But, at least your soul will be cleansed, and there's a hope for eternal salvation. This is the sort of shit they used to do. But now, all of a sudden, after the colonial project, now white women need to be protected. And they become morally virtuous. They become hyper-moral. In essence, they become really actually something that they become pedestalized because they become out of reach for other men. It's actually what the fuck it is. Because that's the way that they reproduce their own racial group.
Like I said, Green Gorilla, like I said, they're seen as the manifestation of feminine divinity. Okay, I'm saying, yeah, like, you know, they go out of their way to put so-called white women on pedestals. I mean,
I don't put them on a pedestal. I don't put them on
yeah,
a pedestal at all.
yeah. I'm not saying that you do. I'm saying like that's how what many people outside of so-called black men do. And part of the reason why we get so much hatred and pushback is because, as has been shown in The Dating Divide, the book called The Dating Divide, most so-called black men don't see white women as special. We don't see them as special. We don't treat them like they're special. We just see them as, you know, like basically a woman. You're like, oh, okay, you know, hi, Bethany.
Now, I'm not saying that, you know, black men are wrong inherently for sleeping with Becky's or Karen's or whatever. That's not the argument I'm making here. Okay, I'm just talking about something that happened in the United States in a particular historical way.
Oh yeah. And like you said, it is totally hypocritical because as I was saying on Bernard Riley's show, I'm like, listen, nobody has a more irrefutable record of being supportive of a woman's personal freedom and self-agency than so-called Aboriginal so-called black men in America. I mean, literally many of the concepts that these feminists claim that they quote unquote invented, like you know, women having, you know, the right to vote, you know, the right to inherit property, the right to divorce, etc. These are cultural norms that were present in many indigenous societies centuries, if not thousands of years before European colonization of the Americas. Even in many places in so-called Africa, you know, you still had like matrilineal bloodlines and whatnot. So again, it's like the fact that we're always being made to be the face of quote unquote true misogyny, again, it's nothing but projection. It's projection, it's shameless smear, and it's abject hypocrisy and hypocritical self-righteousness. So,
but what I want Sandal to get us back on the course that he wants us to go on, though, because I don't want to. I done made the show about something else, so rein us back in, man, and put us back on your wavelength, Sandal.
Yeah, man. So no, it, like I said, you know, again, for this show, you know, we're just, you know, we are examining, you know, again, ourselves as a people, and then again, also the greater society. And the bigger question that comes out of it, you know, again, for Sandog, is for me as a conservative. So let me explain myself personally as a conservative, because what you guys have to remember about me is that I have not lived in America since 2004, right? You know, I am, you know, I am Muslim. I live in the Middle East. You know, I have a, you know, Muslim family and all of these things. So what happens is I believe that my values, in a sense, come from the true definitions of the words versus what they may ultimately mean within an American context or within the context of the African American experience. So I think to some extent, you know, this is where the scales may slide, you know what I'm saying, you know, again, between some of us, right? Because, you know, when I first came to the space and I said the word conservative, it immediately rattled certain people in certain ways. And then when I changed from the word conservative to traditional, that's when people started to be able to have conversations with me, right? So immediately when I came to the space said conservative, I had dudes that was just, you know, wham, you know, again, like I said, again on me. But my life experience, you know, where I'm coming from, it would be more or less in a true, you know, in a true definition, you know, of the word. So like, you know, even when we get down to what's another conservative value, right? Republicanism, right? And so, you know, a political ideology centered on citizenship in a state organized as a republic, right? So, you know, pretty much, so we're pretty much looking at the concept of self-rule, right? So to speak, that you know, that we operate on. Now, okay, I'm listening.
No, so look, let me just say this, right? I created a post, man, on my blog, man, called overlapping consensus versus comprehensive doctrines. I don't know if you ever had the time to look at it, okay?
Okay.
It's under the tab News, Economics, and Politics, and it basically explains, and I went over this on another show, but go to the website. I'll leave a link to it to where you can actually take a look at it. I'll leave the link in the chat. And so that way people can actually take a look at it and kind of gain some insight as to, you know, like, I think what politically is naive amongst black folks, okay? So this is a concept, you know, kind of developed by John Rawls, but I mean, he just put a definition to it, okay? But ultimately, we live in a pluralistic society, man, okay? And it's undergirded politically by the idea that people can think what they want. There's freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, right? So you can't determine what a particular person's viewpoint on a particular issue is going to be. You can't do it. I mean, you can, you know, say that something is wrong or say that, you know, morally this is improper or something like that, but you can't tell somebody what they have to think or what their moral position has to be, okay? But anyway, so you got a concept called overlapping consensus, and then you have a concept called comprehensive doctrines, okay? And overlapping consensus is basically something that happens when individuals or groups with different comprehensive doctrines or systems of belief can agree on a common set of principles or norms. And these principles or norms may be justified for different reasons, but they provide a basis for cooperation, okay? Then you have comprehensive doctrines, which are complete, all-encompassing, closed systems of belief that explain the nature of reality, provide a framework for moral decision-making, and so on and so forth. They include religion, political ideals or ideology, philosophical ideals or whatever, right? But comprehensive doctrines come into conflict with each other a lot because they offer up different and sometimes incompatible explanations of what's real or what's right or wrong or what's fair or unfair, okay? And when you have a comprehensive doctrine and you won't deviate from it, and the only thing you do is you focus on it, it prevents you from reaching across the aisle and cooperating on things that you do have in common with people in other areas beyond that of your comprehensive doctrine. So what we do is, and what I'm saying is what I find black people doing is proselytizing about a comprehensive doctrine incessantly. Here's my position. Here's my position. Here's my comprehensive doctrine. This is my faith. This is my politics, X, Y, and Z. We won't stop doing it. But what we don't do is find principles that we all share in common and say, okay, well, let's rally around those. Let's have consensus about what we agree. Let's agree about what we agree about and use that as a springboard to get other shit done. Now, I hope people understand that in a pluralistic society, you're going to have people with different kind of comprehensive doctrines. You made an allusion to one earlier, Islam. You got some people who are Christian. You have other people who are Jewish. You have some people that are Buddhist. You have some people that are Jains, okay? You got some people who are Hebrew Israelites, right? Like the black Israelites, right? You got some people who are Satanists. I mean, like, this is just the truth about the world we live in. You got some people who are homosexual and who subscribe to woke culture. And then you got some people who, you know, are staunchly opposed to it, right? They don't believe that homosexuality and trans culture is upright, you know, and that it's normal, okay? So it's a pluralistic society. But shit still has to get done within the context of it, right? I mean, like, or can you just hunker down and, you know, in your own comprehensive worldview and say, fuck it, I'm not interacting with or cooperating or coordinating anything with anybody else unless they agree with me 100%. That's the problem we got. The problem is we don't develop institutions to where we can make collective decisions. White people already got it. It's called the fucking government, man. They got 3 branches of it. And that's why they're able to make decisions and do shit. We stay at an impasse because we're still at the level of proselytization about comprehensive doctrines. We got, I mean, it's everything under the sun. ADOS, FBA, B1, Black Power. This red pill, black pill, blue pill, intersectional, trans lives matters. I mean, like, all we do is proselytize and we don't fucking make collective decisions. Now we have institutions where you got people that make decisions within them, operating under, rules related to collective decision making, but outside of the institutions, like the church or like maybe, Greek letter organizations or like social clubs and shit like that, where the fuck are we making collective decisions? We won't even use the apparatus where we live in order to make collective decisions outside of the context of politics as usual in white America. We won't even take over the reins of government where we got numbers. Case in point is Ferguson, fucking Missouri. We are the majority in that fucking area geographically, but white people are like in all the positions of government. Now, I'm not saying that, because black folks aren't used to being self-governing. It's just not, it's not in our practices and habits. But the vast majority of the American populace isn't either, to be quite honest. So, I mean, there's a special class of citizens who, are used to running shit. But the most, the average American citizen is not actively engaged in political decision making. So, suffice it to say, it probably would be difficult to get black people to do the same. But I mean, fuck, elsewhere in the world, black people govern themselves. I mean, otherwise, how the fuck could they even have cultures and families? So, it just is what it is, bro. All I'm saying is, I don't care what your political position is, for the most part. All I care about is, okay, what can we do together? That should be the goal. What can we get done together? Fuck. I mean, yeah, philosophy is great. I like it. I'm always going to be here to teach as much as I can about it or related to it, but I can't force somebody to subscribe to my viewpoint all the way through and through, especially if we, there's a practical enterprise and there's theoretical enterprises. I'm not saying that every enterprise has to be of a theoretical kind. I like theory and shit. I like philosophizing. I like it. But I know that it's not the only, source of engagement between people. At some point, you gotta actually do some shit. I get that. I understand that. But we don't we just don't have I don't know if we're scared. What the fuck is it? I don't even know, man. I'm at a loss myself. I just don't get it. All we do is try to convince each other that we got the right position without even being engaged in a collective decision-making process that will get us somewhere.
Facts.
That's the only issue, because we don't have any institutions and we don't want to develop them. I mean, it's not like we haven't created institutions and organizations before. I mean, the SLCC, the Southern
Leadership,
the SCLC, that's an organization. SNCC was an organization, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Black Panther Party. I mean, we know how to create organizations, but we don't know how to create institutions that, even if or utilize institutions that exist, even in the midst of our oppression. That's what white folks don't want us to do, to be quite honest. That's what they don't want us to do, to be self-governing, to be autonomous, to be self-determining. They want to be able to do that. So, you know, I don't know, bro. I'm, you know, like I'm getting, you know, too off the beaten path, man. I don't want to, I'm not going to hold shit against anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that's your position, that's your position, bro. I have been known to call people coons here and there. The only reason I would use the word coon is when I see somebody who I consider to be black, but they're anti-black because they hate themselves so much that they hate people who look like them.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like if I see Moses, you know, whipping an Egyptian, what am I gonna go call the other Egyptians if I'm a Jew and be like, well, you know, look at this Jew, this motherfucker fucking with y'all. Or I'm gonna turn a blind eye and be like, you know, that's one for the team. It's just a matter. It's all how you look on it. Like I read from David Walker's appeal, right? I can show you the passage, right? A David Walker's appeal, bro. Hold on, let me pull this shit up. It's online. I read the entirety of David Walker's appeal, bro. Online. Let me see here, man. I'm gonna find this fucking passage right here, man. R-E-C-H. As he uses the fucking word so many times. Wretch. Our wretchedness and consequence of slavery. Hold on, I'm finding the passage, man. Where broke themselves free. So ultimately, I'm finding the passage. Go ahead and speak, Sand Dog, before I
So
I lead these people.
Again, right? Because I'm bringing it around because soon it'll be time for me to start fasting, you know, and everything again. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna bring it around, and then now I'll make my ultimate point, and then, you know, we could freestyle for a bit, and then I'm gonna break camp so I could have suhoor is you know, what we do before the fast, kind of like your final meal and everything before the fasting starts.
But hold on, wait a minute. Let me hold on. I found the passage, so I'm gonna share this, and then I'm gonna give it up to you. But I want to share this shit. David Walker. Now, to me, what this woman did was some coon shit. I'm sorry. Okay? So anyway, Affray and murder. This is an excerpt from David Walker's appeal, which is quoting an excerpt from a newspaper article. Okay? And it says, let me make it bigger so it can be seen. A most shocking outrage was committed in Kentucky, about 8 miles from this place, on 4th INST or whatever. A Negro driver by the name of Gordon, who had purchased in Maryland about 60 Negroes or Mayland, was taking them, assisted by an associate named Allen, and the wagoneer who conveyed the baggage to the Mississippi. The men were handcuffed and chained together in the usual manner for driving those poor wretches, while, of course, the women and children were suffered to proceed without encumbrance. So you got niggas in chains, and you got women and children roaming around, free around the fucking cabin. Okay? But they were all being hoarded together and transported. It appears that by means of a file, the Negroes, unobserved, had succeeded in separating the iron which bound their hands in such a way as to be able to throw them off at any moment. So these niggas devised a plan to get free. At about 8 in the morning, while proceeding on the state road leading to Greenup to Vanceburg, 2 of them dropped the shackles and commenced to fight, when the wagoneer rushed in with his whip to compel them to desist. At this moment, every Negro was found to be perfectly at liberty, and one of them seizing a club, gave Petty the vomp blow on the head and laid him dead at his feet. And Allen, who came to his assistance, met a similar fate from the contents of a pistola fired by another of the gang. Gordon was then attacked, seized, and held by one of the niggers, whilst another fired twice at him with a pistol. the ball of which each time grazed his head, but not proving effectual, he was beaten with clubs and left for dead. They then commenced pillaging the wagon, and with an axe split open the trunk of Gordon and rifled it of the money, about $2,400. Now that's a lot of money back then, dog.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, nigga, that's like about a quarter of a meal. 16 of the Negroes then took to the woods. Gordon, in the meantime, not being materially injured, was enabled by the assistance of one of the women to mount his horse and flee. Pursued, however, by one of the gang on another horse with a drawn pistol. Fortunately, he escaped with his life, arriving at a plantation as the Negro came in sight, who then turned about and retreated. And then, but ultimately, what does David Walker say? My brethren, I want you to notice, particularly in the above article, the ignorant and deceitful actions of this colored woman. I beg you to see it candidly. For eternity, here a notorious wretch with 2 other Confederates has 60 of them in a gang, driving them like brutes, the men all in chains and handcuffed, and by the help of God, they were able to get loose from that shit, and caught 2 of the wretches and put him to death and beat the other till they thought he was dead and left him for dead. However, when he deceived them and rising from the ground, this servile woman helped him up on his horse, and he made his escape. Now, that's not some shit that Harriet Tubman would have did. She would have killed the motherfucker, right?
Facts.
But this chick here, being servile woman, he didn't call her a coon, but I mean, he is calling her a coon. Which side you fighting on? So you mean to tell me we done got free, but you gonna help the motherfucker who was locking us up? What, cause God told you to do so? Cause that's the right thing to do, huh? That's the Christian thing to do? Like, come on, man. And he's saying, brothers, what do you think of this? Was it the natural fine feelings of this woman to save such a wretch alive? I know that the blacks take half of them, enlightened and ignorant, or more humane and merciful than the most enlightened and refined European that can be found all in the earth. In other words, you niggas is too nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, you love your enemy. You observe the humanity of the people who fucking put you in bondage. And you extol the virtues of those people. I hear this shit all the time. About how great they are, about how civilized they are, about how refined they are, about how noble they are. And here you got it, like, black men didn't have a problem with calling out women on some coon shit back in the day. But after the 64 Civil Rights Act, this shit is misogynoir now. This is misogynoir. Because you're basically saying that some woman that was black was on some coon shit. But you can't say it today, though, because then that's hating the queens. But my whole thing is, bro, if you're going to be about some black first shit, then you got to be about black first shit all across the board. You can't decide, okay, well, some shit is black first and some shit is not. Now I'm making excuses for certain demographics within the black population to do anti-black shit. But I'm going to give other motherfuckers the riot act. Some people get a pass in the black community, others don't. If you pro-black, you got to be pro-black all across the motherfucking board. You can't just start giving passes and making excuses for different motherfuckers in the black community predicated upon what? What's popular at the time? What the 64 Civil Rights Act and the categories that it was made up at that point by white chicks and shit? And their collaborators like Howard Smith, who was the person who suggested that sex be added to it? Now I ain't saying these people should be persecuted, but come on, man. That's all I'm saying is, man, even if you read Frantz Fanon, he'll talk about how women can be black women just like black men can be on some coon shit. Black men like black women like black men can be on some fucking coon shit. But we can't say it today because if we say it, then what? Oh, you just hate them. You're patriarchal and all of this kind of shit. No, motherfucker, no. That's why I can't trust a nigga on some B1 shit, but then like he can't acknowledge or even, understand like how not only are black men impacted by white supremacy, but black women are also impacted by the shit. So if you on some all black, pro-black shit, you gotta be pro-black all across the fucking board. And if somebody's deviating from the path, then you gotta knock them inside the head just like you'll knock anybody else upside the head. That's my only problem is the inconsistency, the bullshit, and the brown nosing, and the grandstanding, and the virtue signaling predicated upon categories created by an act that really actually wasn't, it was intended for us, but it got fucking hijacked. And now they created all these categories and everybody eating off a plate. We should have been eating off from the beginning, but now everybody got some shit to say about, especially niggas like me. I'm gonna call out bullshit where I see it. I don't give a fuck where it is. If it's in the house, outside of the house, around the house, down the street from the house, I'm gonna be like, that's some bullshit. So please, man, miss me with all this old bullshit about freedom and all. These niggas really don't want to have a philosophical conversation about none of this shit. Because if they did, they would come every now and then, them motherfuckers would pop up and say something. I keep putting links and shit, and they never actually come and fucking have a conversation. All they do is talk on the sidelines and shit. I'll put a bomb in there. See if you want to see a bomb. And the pro-black motherfuckers kill me the most with this shit. Because I am pro-black. But I'm walking around like, Diogenes the centipede motherfucker. I'm walking in the daylight with a motherfucking lamp, dog. Trying to find out who gonna speak the truth. It's like being, like Usher say, I'm in the motherfucking looking around, looking for her ass with a flashlight in the daylight. And no, you gotta be real about this. We can't be real about this. We can't get the shit together. Like, the only thing we gotta do is look at our impropriety and then everything else will just work itself out. This is our movement? This is a fucking movement? Where is it moving? So I'm taking black nationalists to task. I'm saying, bro, you can't be inconsistent with your demand for fidelity to the ideology that you say you promote when you got a whole cadre of motherfuckers who are deviated from the path, but you're buttressing their viewpoints. That shit don't make sense to me. It's fucking contradictory. It's some bullshit. Shout out to the people who hit me up on the Cash App. So shout out to my man Will from the Lou. Appreciate you, dog. I ain't seen you. I ain't talked to you in a minute, dog. Peace out to you, Will. I ain't holler at you in a minute, man. But also shout out to Elwood, McKenzie, Green Company and Consortium, and Charles Gilmore. Big up to y'all, man. Appreciate y'all, man. I think that like a lot of shit that we go through, man, will be solved if we just built the institutions to make collective decisions and be like, I'm not trying to get you to be on anything ideological. No. If we could do that, like we probably can move forward, but niggas don't know how to do that. Niggas just, they love their ideologies. Yeah.
But that will be my argument, right? On cooning, to your point, which is the fracture. So like I said, at that time, like I said, at that time, for where that brother was speaking and with the experience that they had at that time, right? That you really needed to be on code about some stuff. But then once you get to, it's like I said, there are several different Black Americas, and then once you get the post-civil rights, add things like intersectionalism and and all this other stuff, man, and away we go. Like I said, here we are, and it is to your exact point, right? So you might have somebody on the right that people don't like, but then you have somebody that's probably on the left or the far left that is just equally ridiculous in in their talking points, right? So so for me, like, to your point, right, if I see someone like who's African American talking, saying, well, for you to disagree with, let's say, certain rights within a particular way is equal to you supporting violence against a certain group of people. That's like the most absurd thing that I ever heard. But those people don't get called coons, right?
But you know what? White women perfected that game.
You know what I'm saying?
White women perfected the game of, if you don't agree with me, you want to hurt me.
Yeah. So,
that's a white bitch argument, a fucking rhetorical tactic. If you don't agree with me, the world is going to end. If you don't consent to what I say, it's danger. Because ultimately what they've done is they say, okay, well, look, I'm vulnerable. I'm ultimately uber vulnerable, and everyone has to be attendant to my vulnerability. Despite the fact how like empirically ridiculous the claim is. Like, we can look at empirical data and see who the fuck is vulnerable along a whole host of lines. But instead of doing that, we create moral and political categories and use that a priori to determine who's vulnerable. No. And we don't look at who's actually vulnerable or what the fuck is actually occurring or happening empirically. All we do is we use the categories, and then we moralize and proselytize about the categories. And I'm just like nigga, I know black men are like, if they have any fucking consciousness at all, are tired of hearing that bullshit. I'm tired of hearing it. I'm tired of hearing hyperbolic language and hyper, moral language about what's dangerous, what's regressive, what's politically incorrect, and what's politically correct, and all of this. Is like, bro.
But yeah, fam. But because I'm gonna round it out, because like I said, if I don't eat or drink now, man, I won't have nothing.
Oh, but go ahead and get your issue off, bro, man. I appreciate you coming through this joint, man. I appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know you was coming today. You know what I'm saying? We were supposed to do this yesterday, but you welcome anytime. You know what I'm saying? So
you know what I'm saying? So to round it up, so even when you look at republicanism, right? When I talked about, again, rule by citizens, right? And so black people, even when we weren't deemed citizens, right? So let's take a quick gander at what it is, right, to be, like I said, to be a citizen. So in terms of being a citizen, right, it's obeying the law, right? So despite Jim Crow, right, so the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, 14th Amendment, you're a citizen, right? So despite Jim Crow and everything else, you're obeying the law, you're attending school, whatever amount of school you can get, you're paying taxes, you're serving in the armed forces, and you're damn sure appearing in court, right? So, and in many cases, being denied, or you're appearing in court as a defendant, but being denied jury duty or not being considered to be a credible witness, right? In case, especially if it involves, a particular demographic of people, right? And so, so the question becomes, again, when you talk about, African Americans and, our commitment to society, you know, and all of this other nonsense that people like to test out is despite the fact that they were never even recognized as people, despite the fact that you're 100 years plus on record trying to roll back all the things that make these people or citizens, they still observed, for the most part, they still observed to the best of their ability their duties as a citizen, and had to fight for the capacity, to serve society and the nation the best, you know, the best they can, despite the pushback from the other side or the other demographic of society. So all of these things, to me, it's like it's, I know, again, I know somebody could say hyperbolic will be the word for it, but I mean, if it was just emotions for me, right? I'm like, this is the most insane, like I said, this is the most insane thing that I've ever seen. And so I came up with this today because this is the type of discussion that I have with my other buddies who are quote unquote conservative from other demographics, right? And sad and most unfortunately, when I have these conversations, right, you know, all I get is silence. I don't get, you know, I don't get any real intellectual reasons back because there are none, right?
Yeah, I mean, because look, at the end of the day, this is what conservatism means in America. I don't like niggas, especially if you keep espousing states' rights. You know, the whole concept of states' rights. You know, fiscal responsibility, limited government. What that means is it has a historical context, and you can't just look at it isolated away from and carved away from the historical context out of which these concepts elicit meaning. So, like, states' rights only means anything in relation to slavery. Outside of the context of slavery, who really gives a fuck about states' rights? Or federalism or anti-federalism? I mean, you could talk about issues tangential to slavery, but I mean, the elephant in the room, of course, is slavery. Let's not make a mistake about the shit. But motherfuckers want to pussyfoot around the issue and beat around the bush like it wasn't all that important. No, it wasn't really that important. You're a fucking lie. So I had to accept your lie for you to espouse this bullshit viewpoint? Nah. I'm not saying that there aren't some, you know, put it this way. Most of the people who are really actually conservatives aren't lovers of liberty to begin with. They just use it as a fucking excuse. I'm just keeping it real, man. Like, I mean, or if they do love liberty, they just want to, they love liberty of being, like, not having to fucking have responsibility or a duty to you, to ensure your safety and your freedom. They want it only for their own demographic. Which begs the question, do they really have a fidelity to the concept, or, you know, or do they just have a fidelity to themselves and they speak with a forked tongue and they do and say anything they can in order to advantage themselves? That's the whole issue I'm dealing with. So that's just me, dog. You know, I ain't gonna hold you too long, man. I know you gotta skip up out of here, man. I'm gonna stay on for a little bit longer because I want to demonstrate one more point, and then I'm up out this joint.
Yeah, man. But yeah, GG, much love, fam, and thank you for allowing me to come on, man. And you know, again, and thank you for helping me to, you know, again, articulate these ideas, right? And so, one of the things that I will tell African Americans, in a sense, is that when you look at what's called conservative values, if you look at them at their core, and we'll do one for, I guess, liberal values in the future, but if you look at them at their core, you and everything that you have been through in the United States and has done, you know what I'm saying? You are the epitome of these values, right? So if you look at the civil rights movement, right, when you talk about moral absolutism, right, remember, at the end of the day, a lot of your civil rights leaders were what? Clergymen, right? So these men, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, these men were coming from the stance of the word of God, right? The word of God versus, you know, what America has on paper versus what's happening on the ground, right? And so it doesn't get, so when you talk about not taking handouts, standing on your own feet, and all of this stuff, right? The UNIA, the Nation of Islam, again, Southern Christian leaders, they've been saying this kind of stuff since the beginning. So again, so now comes, and this is Sandog's battle for the realm of politics or the space in which I exist. When I talk to my dudes on the other side, is what's more conservative than this body of work that you call an African American?
Yeah, for sure. I get it, bro. Hold on, let me change scenes right quick, because that shit just gonna keep making all noise. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll take the dinging, but hearing all that roaring and shit from these gorillas and shit don't bother me.
Well, yeah. So that's that's where my point is coming from. And then, the idea of, shout out to the manosphere in all its entirety in regards to, Black men getting to the place. Because again, I defined, at least from Sandog's perspective, I defined the manosphere as African American male or Black male self-determinism, right? And then out of that self-determinism, you're going to have to figure out what your value system it's going to be, and part of that, to some extent, is striking out on your own and experiencing certain things on your own to determine what your boundaries will be. So that way, going forward, politically or in life or in general, you're able to maintain your peace, right? But with that being said, man, salute to you, Gigi. Salute to all the brothers that came up on this panel. Salute to all the brothers in the chat. You know what I'm saying? Much love, much peace. And to America, in the words of MLK, all I ask is that you are what you say you are on paper, because somewhere I read. And with that, y'all, peace.
Peace out, man. Rude dog. I'll holler at you later.
Rude.
Peace. So look, man, I'm about to close out, man. But one thing I do want to show you before I burn up out of here, man. Like a lot of people, they'll use hyperbolic language and say that the Black manosphere is dangerous and that we represent some danger. And the question is, well, what danger do we represent? That's the question I would like to ask everybody out there, like who might be listening, who, don't particularly jive well with, the kind of things, the kind of conversations that take place here. Like, this place is dangerous. Like, like motherfuckers here are advocating for women to get hurt and shit like that. Like, come on, man. Cut the fucking bullshit out, man. It's hyperbolic bullshit. It's hyperbolic bullshit. And I got an article right here. Like, look. This article here is called Thinking Sex, Notes for a Radical Theory of the Politics of Sexuality. Like, if you want to know, like, who's at the forefront of the sexual revolution in the United States or the Western world, one of those persons is going to be Gail Rubin. And she makes an odd claim. Well, odd, but I mean, because if you hear arguments in the United States contemporarily, especially made by, the Me Too crowd and all, people like that, it's like, it's just so much violence taking place. It's like women are being eradicated and eliminated by the hour or some shit like that. Here's a woman who's at the head of the sexual revolution who's basically saying that's bullshit. And I'm not gonna go through the entirety of the article, but I mean, she understands it. She's like, look, much of the sex law currently on the books also dates from the 19th century morality crusades. The first federal anti-obscenity law in the U.S. was passed in 1873. The Comstock Act, named for Anthony Comstock, an ancestral anti-porn activist and the founder of the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice, made it a federal crime to make, advertise, sell, possess, send through the mails, or import books or pictures deemed obscene. The law also banned contraceptive or abortive, drugs that could induce abortion, and devices and information about them. In the wake of the federal statute, most states passed their own obscenity laws or anti-obscenity laws. And the Supreme Court began to whittle down both federal and state Comstock laws during the 1950s. By 1975, the prohibition for materials used for and information about contraception and abortion had been ruled unconstitutional. However, although the obscenity provisions have been modified, their fundamental constitutionality has been upheld. Thus, it remains a crime to make, sell, mail, or import material which has no purpose other than sexual arousal. Although sodomy statutes date from older strata of the law, when elements of canon law were adopted into civil codes, most of the laws used to arrest homosexuals and prostitutes came out of the Victorian campaigns against white slavery. Now, if you ask me, you start talking about white slavery, that's the inception of rape logic. Or the arguments related to rape culture. These campaigns produced the myriad prohibitions against solicitation, lewd behavior, loitering for immoral purposes, age offenses, and brothels and bawdy houses. In her discussion of the British white slave scare, Judith Walkowitz observes that recent research delineates the vast discrepancy between the lurid journalistic accounts and the reality of prostitution. Evidence of widespread entrapment of British girls in London and abroad is slim. However, public furor over this ostensible problem forced the passage of the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885, a particularly nasty and pernicious piece of omnibus legislation. The 1885 Act raised the age of consent for girls from 13 to 16. But it also gave police far greater summary jurisdiction over poor working class women and children. It contained a clause about making indecent acts between consenting male adults a crime, thus forming the basis of legal prosecution of male homosexuals in Britain until 1967. The clauses of the new bill were mainly enforced against working class women and regulated adult rather than youthful sexual behavior. So anyway, the White Slave Traffic Act was also ushered in the United States. So in the United States, the Mann Act, also known as the White Slave Traffic Act, was passed in 1910. And subsequently, every state in the Union passed anti-prostitution legislation. But it was all predicated initially off the idea that like white women were getting snatched off the streets. So there you have it. This whole notion that women are at risk in order to pass laws and shit. It's the same shit. People make these hyperbolic claims about what having conversations will do. Or what, instead of looking at the empirical data on the ground, they're making matter-of-fact claims based upon moral ideology. If you say this, it's going to lead to that. You're creating conditions of danger for X if you say Y. I'm just tired of hearing that bullshit. I'm tired of hearing motherfuckers in the academy, social content creators saying this fucking bullshit. I'm tired of niggas being tone police, saying that they shouldn't be upset if they're subjected to injustice, because the only injustice that exists is along the lines of the categories delineated by the fucking 1964 Civil Rights Act, which is where fucking intersectionality borrows the categories of race, class, and gender from. But anyway, man, I'm out of this joint, man. Look, I done got worked up, man. I'm at the point where I'm hungry, about to make me a motherfucking big-ass hamburger, man, to sit back and watch some TV and chill on out. If you ain't got no questions, you ain't got no comments, I'm up out of here, man. I'll holler at y'all on the next one, man. Go peep out the website, man. Until next time, man, I'll holler at you cats, bro. Y'all be good.